Thanks for joining us, everybody. We're going to paint this awesome potion bottle today. My light's a little bright, so there we go. That's a little bit easier to see. So we're going to paint the potion bottle, and we're going to paint the flowers around it. So in order to do the potion bottle, I put a website in the chat that Susan's going to put up for you guys, and you can go to my website. Just go to that webpage and download an image of the potion bottle if you want to trace it. If not, I'm going to walk you through drawing it. I'm going to move my light just a little bit so you can see. So first we're just going to sketch out the potion bottle, and then we're going to go through painting all the flowers that we're going to put on the bottom. All right, so you're going to need a pencil, an eraser if you make any mistakes and you want to erase anything. And if you want to outline in pen, you absolutely can. Just make sure that it's a pen that is not going to bleed when you put the water over it. You can also wait till you're done at the end if you want to outline. The only things I use pen for on here were the spider, which you can omit if you don't like spiders. And then I put a few little spider webs around, which you can also omit if you don't like spiders. And if you're not into spooky and you don't want it to be a potion bottle, feel free to turn that into a perfume bottle with flowers around it, or even just paint the flowers. Okay, so for your bottle, I just make a straight-ish line down the middle of my paper, and that's just a little bit of a guide for me. Fun part about this is that you don't quite need to draw the bottom of the bottle, and you can change the shape of the bottle if you like. If you like a straighter edged, a straighter sided bottle versus the round bottle, you can do that too. So I'm just going to, at the top, draw an oval, and this is not going to be perfect by any means, but it's a potion bottle. It should be wonky. Wonky is good. So I'm going to draw an oval up top like that, tilting away from the light so you can see. And then I'm just going to finish the cork shape by coming down on one side, coming down on the other. So I'm just drawing a line, and I'm angling it inward just a little bit, not a whole lot. This bottle's not going to be super even, but it's going to be pretty. Then I'm just going to give the bottle a little bit of a neck by following that line that I drew at the bottom. Like so. And then when I come down to the bottle neck, I'm also going to draw a line that comes in just slightly on either side. I can already tell that my lines are super wonky, but it's a fun ancient potion bottle. So now I'm going to have the bottle, it's almost like you can draw, if you want to, a round shape. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. You can move your page around so it's easier to draw. And I'm making small little sketchy lines. Notice I'm not drawing like just one continuous line. I can always erase the extra little marks that I don't want afterwards. Making it a little bit wider. So my circle is quite sketchy looking. And then I'm just going to connect the top of the neck with a little bit of a curve till it meets that circle that we drew. And then what I'm going to do is erase any of the lines that I don't want. It's okay if you accidentally erase your main line, you can just kind of sketch over it after. Now, if you don't want your line pronounced in your finished piece, you can just lightly run your eraser over the lines to lighten them up, and the paint will take care of the rest for you. But I'm going to leave mine visible because my light will take some of it away. So now I have my potion bottle, my wonky potion bottle. I'm just going to fill in any of the lines that got erased. You don't have to, you can leave them, but I want to so you can see it. And then the bottom of the potion bottle is going to be covered up by flowers. So you don't even really have to have them there. You can erase that away. That's what your potion bottle looks like. All right. So now I'm going to set the potion bottle aside that we've drawn, and I'm going to give you 2 minutes more to finish drawing in your potion bottle. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. The wonkier, the better. It's Halloween. It's a potion bottle. It's been around. We can pretend it's ancient and somebody dug it up, right? I'm going to put that aside. Give you guys a couple minutes, and then we're going to start learning how to paint the flowers that we'll put at the bottom. If anybody has any questions, you can just pop them in the chat, and Susan will periodically ask me your questions. Oh, and I'm going to run over our supplies really quickly other than the pencil and the eraser. I'm using 140-pound watercolor paper. This is just the one that I love using. You can use lighter or heavier, but I think 140-pound is just a nice in the middle weight. I have got Winsor & Newton watercolors here, Lucas watercolors on the bottom, fresh water, a paper towel, and I've got 2 different brushes here. They're both size 6. They're 2 different brands. One is Silver Black Velvet, one is Mimic Kolinsky, and my all-time favorite, but I for some reason can't seem to find my number 6, is Simply Simmons from Michaels. So we're going to use these guys today. You can use whatever size brush you have, whatever you feel comfortable using. Some people prefer using a larger brush. Some people prefer using a smaller brush. It's all up to you. The size of your flowers will change a little bit if you have a much larger brush. I think a size 6 or a size 8 is a nice in-between brush to use. You just always want to make sure that your brushes come to a point. And I prefer round brushes, but you can always use different shapes. I just can mimic a lot of different shapes using a round brush. These are tube watercolors that I squirted into my own palette. I prefer using my watercolors dry, and I know a lot of you here probably have taken classes with me before. And you can buy them already in a palette like this, or you can make your own. Pick your favorite colors.
Kris, did you say that those watercolors were Winsor & Newton?
Yes, Winsor
Okay.
& Newton.
Thanks.
No worries. WINSOR, Winsor.
Yeah.
And I've also collected all of these colors over time. You really just need your basics, your blue, your yellow, your red, maybe a black and a brown. And you can mix all your colors yourself, but you can always pick up colors as you go and make a giant palette over time. All right, but whatever watercolors you have there that you're using today is totally fine. All right, so everybody should have their potion bottle drawn. We are going to get right into the flowers. So for this guy, it's sort of a rose. We're going to cheat a little bit today and draw it, or paint it rather, in an easy way. I'm mixing together a pink with a dark blue to give myself sort of a burgundy color. But as always, use whatever colors you have and whatever colors you like. I sort of went with like a pinkish fall theme. If you want to do more of a brownish fall theme, you can certainly do that. Or if you don't like fall colors at all, pick whatever colors you like. So for this flower here, the rose, we're going to cheat, like I said, and you're going to draw a spiral, but it's not going to be a solid spiral like that. We're going to skip. So pick up your brush, drop your brush, just like this. I even forgot where I started that one and made a line that was off. It just makes sort of a spiral shape. Maybe I'll put a couple in the middle. There you go. And then just keep filling in between there with more little curved dashes. Doesn't really matter where. What you want to do is preserve some of that white space. So you don't want to cover up the whole thing. You just want to kind of keep, and I'm using really light pressure on my brush. I want some of that white to go away, but not all of it. So I'm just sort of making little curved lines with my brush like that. Do you see how that's starting to look like a flower? And then for our ultimate cheat, we're just going to draw a scalloped edge. We're going to mix it all together. So just draw your scalloped edge in. As many petals as you want, as few petals as you want. Doesn't matter. Like so. And then I'm going to fill in that outer space. I'm going to leave that middle where there's some white space preserved. I'm going to fill in space around where I drew that and where the middle part ended. And if you think it's too much white space, like I feel mine just has a little extra, just go ahead and draw. Fill in a few of them with those same strokes that you made before. And that's how you get your rose. Now, the way I got this darker middle on my rose was I did this and I let it dry, and then I came in with another layer of the same paint. So we're gonna let this guy dry for a little bit while we run through the other flowers, and then I'll do the second layer. But that's a nice cheat way of doing a rose. I'm gonna rinse my brush off. I'm gonna give you guys a couple seconds to finish up that rose, and then we're gonna go on to the second flower, which has no name. Does that look like any flower that you know? Because I just make these up, so I'm not sure what they are. But if it looks like something you can identify, I'd love to know. I can't think of anything. I don't know many flowers that have 4 petals either. Should look that up. I know they exist. I just don't know what they are. So my second flower I did in pink. You can do whatever color you like. You can tell by my palette, my pink has almost completely disappeared. So I use this color the most. And this color is Opera Rose by Winsor & Newton. It's a really bright pink. And then I'm going to get a little bit of Permanent Rose and mix that in there. Also Winsor & Newton. All right. So for this flower, it's super easy. All you do is point your brush towards the middle of the flower and then sort of just draw a loop while keeping your brush down. I'm going to hold the paper up when I do the next one so you can see. So this is the motion that you're going to make. A teardrop shape. But you're keeping your brush on the paper. So you're not drawing it like this. You could, but what we're going to do is put the brush down, come out, and push the brush in. What that does is it gives us a little bit of a wonky edge that looks like a petal. So it's not so perfect. Turning my paper around just because I don't want to twist my arm around. I go again. Make that teardrop shape with your brush laying on your paper. And then you want your fourth one to be across from where you first started. And you see how it doesn't get a chance to have like a perfect edge? It just ends up looking like a petal. And if you had drawn it, you would end up with too many perfect ovals. But that would also look like a different flower. So you can play around with your brush and get different looks out of it. All right, so I'm mixing together that berry color that we mixed up at first, where I put the blue and the pink. I'm mixing a little bit of red together with that to give me sort of a brownish red. And I'll go over these flowers again when I'm putting them on the potion bottle. So if you didn't catch it then, I will definitely do it again for you. So now this is interesting. All of these coming up are the exact same stroke, pretty much. Exact same thing. So starting with this guy, what I do is I start my brush where the middle of my flower would be, and then I push down with my brush as I drag it backwards. And as I come to where I want the tip of that petal to be, I lift my brush so that only the tip of the brush is left on the paper, and then I pick up. Then I'm going to do it on the other side, like so. And then I'm just going to use my brush to kind of fill that in. Show you again. So we're going to angle it a little bit over here. Start where you want your petal to start. Push your brush down. You're going to curve it slightly and then pick it up. Same thing on the other side. Push down, curve it a little slightly, and pick it up. Now I'm doubling these to get a thicker petal. And I'm just going around and getting 5 petals out of it. But if you can get 6 or 4, go for whatever you can get. Because sometimes I'll run out of space for a 5th petal and just end up with 4, and that's totally fine. So put your brush down, push down on your brush, curve it slightly, and bring your brush back up. Same thing on the other side. I picked it up a little too soon there, but that gives you a fun petal shape. So now these, I'm going to squish a petal in between these two. So it's going to touch a little bit. That's fine. Super simple flower. Anybody have any questions so far, or are we doing okay?
So far, I don't have any. We're
I
doing
think everybody's
okay.
busy painting.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. All right. So Now this is that same stroke, except we're not curving the brush. We're going to keep the brush straight, but it's still the tip of the brush, push down, and then come back up. And I put more petals in on this one. So you want to imagine where you want that middle point to be. Put your brush down, push down, and come back up. Then you want to go opposite that petal and do the same. You see how by using one simple stroke, you can do all of these different botanicals? It's pretty neat. And then I'm going to go across here. Now, sometimes you can struggle with this if your brush doesn't come to a good point. And if that's the case, then definitely just go ahead and draw it in. Just draw an oval with a pointy edge and fill it in like that. If you're struggling with your brush. If not, learn this technique. Okay, so I've gone across. Now I'm going to fill in those empty spaces with the same exact tip of the brush. Push down, come back up. You can paint black-eyed Susans like this. You can paint sunflowers like this. You can paint lots of different flowers like this. And I'm just going in between. Now, if you like your flower to be perfectly symmetrical, you can certainly do that. But I always like to throw in an extra few petals just to add a little bit of visual interest. You don't have to do this. If you like the amount of petals you have, by all means, stay with those. And you also got a thinner petal and a thicker petal, all while using the same brush. We just did it on both sides for a thicker petal and just once for a thinner petal. And that technique, with you pushing your brush down and bringing it back up, it varies the tones on here, so it's more interesting. You get the light, the dark, the medium. It just makes it more interesting to look at. Now, when these dry, I'll put some middles in, but for right now, we're just doing the general shape of it. Now, you can see here, this leaf is the same as these petals, just one pass with my brush. This is the same as this guy down here. I went on either side, but then when it was dry, I went in with a darker shade of green and just made a vein on that leaf, which you don't have to do. But we're going to do that branch next. I'm just mixing up some olive green, or sorry, some permanent green, maybe a little black, yeah, to make it darker. Maybe a little blue too. There we go. Okay, so for this, you want to start by painting your thin stem, and I'm using just the very tip of my brush. I'm holding it like a pencil all the way down, and I'm going to draw a little bit of an arced line. Really thin, really light pressure. If you can't get it this thin, by all means use a really, really teeny little brush. Okay, so at the very top of my arc, I'm going to do that technique where I put the tip of the brush down, push down, come back up. Did not have enough paint on my brush there, so I'll do it again. And then I'm just going to start doing them at an angle, starting at the top. And maybe this last guy got squished a little bit, so he's going to go upwards instead of out. That just makes it a little more interesting to look at. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, starting at the top. Angle those out. And there you go. Easy peasy. If you're struggling with getting that shape, make sure your brush comes to a point. If it doesn't come to a point, you're going to need to get one with a point. The Simply Stamens from Michaels they run about $2.99 and they definitely come to a point. So you can experiment with those. If not, go ahead and draw. So sometimes it's not always you. Sometimes it's the brush. It's not your fault. I'm just adding a little bit of yellow into that mixture to change my color up a little bit. You don't have to. And then this guy is the same as that, where we just curve the brush as we push down and come up. Curve the brush and push down. And if anything wonky happens, like the bottom of this isn't a full peak like this one, you can just take your brush and fill it in, or you can leave it. It depends on what you like. Now, some of these leaves are already dry, some are not. So I'm just going to take these two at the top here that are dry and show you. I just mixed up, I had a little bit of a darker green on here. You can also use the same shade of green. If you put another layer on it, it's going to be darker. And I'm again holding that brush like a pencil. And just the very tip of the brush, I'm just going to drag it through the middle of that leaf, from the bottom of the leaf to the tip, and just give it one vein. You can give it multiple veins if you want to. You can branch them off, but I like to keep it simple. So and then these two guys are the same exact thing, except I didn't wait till just the tip of the brush was left on the paper before I lifted off. I just lifted off with it. So I'll show you. And these are a nice filler if you have too much space between flowers and you need to fill. I put the tip of the brush down and then I pick it up. It's almost like a stamp, but I did drag my brush backwards a millimeter or two before I picked it up. And this one is the same thing, except I made it purple and I added some stems to it. I can show you. And then I took the tip of the brush and I connected them, gave them little stems, and made it into filler. Now, if your watercolor has dried too light, because you can see that this is quite saturated, you can put another layer on top of it if you want, or you can leave it. I really like to layer up my colors so you can see a lot of difference between lights and darks. Now, I know I went a little bit fast there, so if anybody's confused, ask away all the questions. I'm going back into this flower to darken up the middle. And all I'm going to do is follow some of those lines that you had made before. Just make these little, I guess they're like C shapes almost. Little dashed lines that are curved. How about that? I'm trying to preserve that white that the white space that we left. Don't want to cover that up because I like the contrast. And that's how you darken up the middle, and it just looks like the middle of the flower is a little darker, and you can tell that it goes in a little bit. You can leave this flower as is, or you can just draw a few little lines coming out from the middle to add a little interest like that. It didn't change a whole lot, but it just adds another layer if you wanted to. You don't have to do that. And then to put the middles on those flowers, take a little navy blue, a little black, and on this flower I don't put a middle on. You can, but I usually don't. I just put a few little taps on my brush in a circular formation just to add a little bit of interest, or you could just put a solid circle like so if you wanted to. For this guy, I just draw a few little stamens like that, and then at the top of the stamens I put a little blob. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be a perfect oval or a circle. I'm just blobbing my brush on there. And you don't have to do 5, you can do 100, you can do a lot. And then this guy doesn't even need a middle. You could put a yellow middle, but because I just wanted to add any dark colors in here as much as I could just to make it a little bit spookier, I use a few little dots like so. Super simple. And again, I'll show you how I do them again once I start painting the potion bottle. I'm going to take a sip of water. Does anybody have any questions for me while I do that?
No, Kris, I think everybody must be really busy painting, as you said. I haven't gotten any questions today.
I think so. I'm sort of like running them through a little quickly, so they're focused. So now typically people feel more comfortable. I'm going to leave this here so you guys can see if you're still working on that. Typically, people love to paint their background first and then paint their flowers on. And I'm all for that, but I wanted my flowers to be as vibrant as possible. So I placed my flowers around, and it was sort of painstaking to go in between these flowers and color in the potion bottle, but that's what I did. You can, if you have masking fluid, mask off your flowers, but that's usually a little more complicated when there's actual paint on your paper. What masking fluid is sort of like a gum, like a glue almost, a removable glue that will cover up anything that you don't want covered. But I think it might be even more complicated to go in there and cover everything with the gum. Just take your time and go in between each flower. Okay. So the first one is our little cheat rose, which I need to mix up some more color for. All right. And I'm going to make my paint a little darker than I usually would for 2 reasons. One, I want you to be able to see what I'm doing, and 2, oops, didn't mean to make it that dark. I just wanted it to be really saturated with color. So I'm going to be mixing up some more because I accidentally mixed the correct purple for this flower. We don't want to waste. I'll go back in and mix up some more. All right. There we go. Okay, so I am going to raise my painting so that it's a little easier for you to see while I paint. I'm gonna rise up on a box. If you took my classes before, you'd know that I was always painting on a box so you could see it. My new camera is supposed to be able to adjust by zooming in, but I haven't quite figured out how to do that yet. So we're gonna kick it mechanical and old school with a box riser. All right, so this is the first flower that we're going to do, and I'm just gonna randomly place it on here on the bottom. So I'm gonna put the tip of my brush down, and I'm gonna angle my paper. Don't be afraid to move your paper every which way just so it's comfortable for your hand. You don't really want to have to twist your arm and hurt yourself. You want to be able to paint for many, many years. So I'm putting the tip of my brush down, pushing down as I curve, and then come up, do the same thing on the other side. Ta-da! Petal. Turn my again, curve that petal on one side, curve it on the other side. Ooh, that color is pretty. Permanent rose and indigo.
Hi, Kris. That's beautiful. But I did get a question,
Sure.
which is someone would like to know if there's a way to make pink using only a primary palette.
You can always water down your red with water, or you can add white if you have white. But other than that, pink is one of those colors you really have to purchase separately. And if you are going to purchase a pink, I highly suggest it be Permanent Rose from Winsor and Newton. Sorry, I know that's not the answer you wanted. I actually went down the rabbit hole the other day researching pink paints for that reason exactly. And it was a sad rabbit hole because now I need to buy like 12 more shades of pink. And usually Michael's has the permanent magenta, but you can always get it online at Jerry's Artorama or Michael, or maybe Michael's has it online, but Blick Art Supplies. Tip of the brush, curve your brush as you come up. And do it on the other side. If you have white space in the middle, you can leave it or you could fill it in. It's up to how you like it. So that's what we got so far. This flower. And I can't do anything about the middle until it dries. I'm just going to rinse it off. My email address is krisloyaart@gmail.com. If you have any questions about paints, picking them, buying them, where to buy them, what to buy, how to buy, anything like that, email me. I always love to talk supplies. And I'd love to help. As you can see, I put the flower, this guy, over here. That wasn't intentional. I was talking and not paying attention. All right, so now I'm going to put my rose in a different spot. So that tells you you can move your flowers around, 1, and 2. If you don't like a certain flower, like you don't like the look of it, or you just didn't have any luck creating it, you can skip that flower. Or if you like just this flower, you can cover the whole thing in just that flower. It's up to you. So we're going to put that rose over here. So again, I'm going to make a spiral of little curved dashes. And I want that rose to be fairly big. A few more in the middle. And now that I have the outline of it, I'm just going to keep adding more little curved dashes. Fill it in as much as possible while still maintaining some of that white space. And that's just a nice contrast, that white space. Okay. Then I'm going to make a scalloped edge. As many petals as you can fit on there and that you want to. Now, if you're drawing your petals and you start filling it in, so we're going to fill in the outer part between the middle and the scallop. If you're filling it in and you get a harsh line on the edge, that tells you right there that you're not using enough water. People always ask how much water to use, and it's really something that you need to play with to figure out. But if you've already come back in just a few seconds to fill this in, and it's a solid line that you can't blend, you definitely used not enough water. You never want it to be where you can hold your brush like this after you dip in paint and the water and the paint like flows off completely. Unless you're covering a massive space with paint, you don't want that. So you want to see that the brush is juicy. You can see that there's color in there. It's shiny. You see how that's shiny? It's full of paint. But if I hold it vertically over my palm, it's not going to drain into my palm. I think I actually want that rose to be a little bit bigger. I'm just going to make my scallops bigger. And you can adjust as you go. I think I have too much white space too, so I'm going to kind of fill some of that in a little bit. There we go. And I think that's big enough. And I can see my pencil line through the middle of my rose. I don't know if you can see that. Yes, you can. So I'm going to make sure that when I go in with that darker color, I use just a little bit to cover up that line. Unless there's so much going on that you don't notice it, it's fine. Okay, so now I'm going to go in and do that flower that we made those teardrop shapes while keeping your brush on the paper. I'm going to put that one right here. Now, some of this is wet, and so when I draw a flower, if the petals touch each other, the colors will run together. If that's something that bothers you, you're going to want to make sure that this is dry before you go in and add another flower. Me, I kind of like it sometimes when it all blends together. You can see here, I started filling in this part when the potion was still wet, so it sort of bled out a little bit there, and I think it looks really neat. But if that would drive you insane, please just wait. I'm going to put my brush down, and I'm going to make a teardrop shape while leaving my brush on the paper. I don't think my teardrop was thick enough, so I'm going to go over it again, go wider this time. There we go. And go slow, because if you go fast, your bristles will probably kind of kick paint up, which is a fun look. You can try it, but that would drive me nuts. So we've got two flowers that are touching, and this guy's off the edge. And then, so I'm going to put one more in the middle here. And I'm actually going to tuck an extra flower here, and I'm probably going to tuck an extra one of these guys because I really like these. I like the shape of those a lot. So I'm probably going to put in two of those. I'm going to put in one here, and then I'm going to make a smaller one. I'm not going to like drag my brush out as long, so I can make it shorter. Well, maybe I'll just do the tiny one first. Tip of the brush, push down, and back up. Then go across from that first petal. And then crisscross, one over here, one over here. I spin my paintings the entire time that I paint them. I'm always moving my paper around. Oh, this little tiny one is darling. I love it. Just gonna stick in a few extra petals, not the whole way around. It's really cute. I actually really like that. And your first attempt does not have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be good. It's just your first attempt. You can paint this all weekend long over and over and over again if you want to. Do you guys want me to put this on that web page where you have the drawing? Because I can add that on there. Maybe that'll help if you want to go back over the weekend and do it without me around. Okay, now I'm going to do this. A larger one here. So you see that my rose was still wet. And so that petal is totally bleeding into the rose. Totally fine. It's the fun part about watercolor. You can only control it so much, right? Somehow my sleeve ended up in my paint. I got some paint on the bottom of my paper. Which again, always happens to me. But it doesn't bug me. I can just trim my paper off on the bottom. You can always come back from a mistake somehow. You can trim your paper, or you can take clean water. My water is way too purple to attempt to do this, but if you had clean water, you can just put some on your finger and carefully try to get it off and blot it with a paper towel. Oh, maybe I want one more petal over here, even though I know it's gonna be a lot. All right. So what these look like so far. So I just filled in the bottom. Now the fun part, to fill in some greenery. And I know that this is being recorded, so it'll be up sometime maybe next week or the week after on the library's YouTube channel. And there are a lot of recorded classes on there. You can paint along another time. All right, so I think I'm going to do I'm actually going to do two. I'm going to do one over here. I'm going to do a shorter one going inward of my leaf branches. So I just drew two little stems, and then I'm going to put the leaves on from there. Any questions, or everybody's still busy painting?
I think everybody's still busy. Nope, no new questions. I did put the YouTube address there in the chat box for everybody.
Oh, that was helpful. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I love that you guys do that. Okay, so I'm going to put in, so these leaves are going to overlap, which is fine. I'm just going to put a couple on that second one. Ooh, that's starting to look so fun. Then I'm going to tuck in some of those double leaves here. and maybe here. You can really step back and look at your painting and see where you want to add your greenery. So I'm going to put the tip of my brush down, then curve it as I push the brush down, and then pick the brush up. I got one. And I'm going to tuck one in here. Like so, and then I'm going to tuck another pair in over here. And then we'll get to some of the little fillers. And then we'll finish the potion bottle. Like so. That's looking really cute.
Here's an interesting question, Kris.
Sure.
Somebody said about the paper, I know you recommended 140 pounds, but you didn't say if it was hot or cold press. Do you have a preference?
I do have a preference. I like cold press, which has a little bit of a texture, which I think you can see where the paint's wet. You can see the texture of the paint. I like a little tooth to grab the paint. But when you're scanning in artwork for if you want to make, say, greeting cards with your work on it, I would definitely paint on hot press because it's perfectly smooth. So I do use both depending on what I need my end result to be, but my preference is for cold press. So it's up to you. I would try both and see what you like. You can generally though scrub harder and manhandle you can be rougher on the cold press. You can't be too rough on the hot press. So if you're somebody that like scrubs a lot with your brush, like I am, hot press might not be for you. And there's also another grade called rough, and I don't love it. I feel like it takes a lot of water to get your painting to move. And there's one company, Fabriano, makes something in between the hot press and the cold press, and they actually sent me some. I haven't tried it yet, so I will report back when I try that. Okay, good question. Thanks. Good catch. All right. I mix up a little bit of a dark blue. Maybe I'm just gonna do some of those stamped. You can kind of use wonky colors on something Halloween themed. Some of those stamped flowers. Oh, sorry, fillers. Stick that in there. Maybe to balance it off, we could probably put 2 of them over here. Maybe I'll put a third one in the middle. Like so. It doesn't always have to be in that 3 formation. I do like odd numbers. And then maybe I'll tuck in some of the stamped purple filler over here. Make a little stem. And then a little bit over here. And I'm not going to get too carried away doing that because you can really tuck in a lot of foliage in between your petals, so in between your flowers, so you can get as detailed as you want to. Or not, it's up to you. And now I'm going to put in the middles on the flowers that I have already. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll paint something and I'll think there's enough on there and I'll walk away. Because if you sit here and you keep adding, you might add too much. So walk away for a little bit and then come back and look at it later. I'm going to put in the stamens on here. It's better to walk away and then add your finishing touches later on than be mad at yourself because you put too much on your painting. I put just one circle in the middle of that one. And then put a circle of dots on that one. And same with this guy. I like to use navy blue and dark purple to put in my centers. Or if I don't do that, I like to use yellow for my centers. Those are pretty flowers. So you get to decide how, you get to decide a couple of things. How high up you want your potion on your bottle. So you can make it higher, lower. You can make your potion purple. You can make it black. You can make it orange. You can make it green. You can make it whatever color you want to. I just thought purple was fun. So I did mine in purple. So I'm going to make sure that everywhere that my potion is going to touch is dry, or as dry as possible. If you're the kind of person that is not going to like it if your colors bleed together, make sure it's really dry. Grab a hair dryer, dry your brush. It's not going to bother me too much. I mix up a little bit of purple, and then I'm going to turn this way, and I'm just going to carefully start filling in my potion. Now you want your brush to have quite a bit of paint and water on it because you don't want it to dry out at any point when you're filling in. So right now I'm just concerned about filling in around the shapes of the flowers. Do you see how wet that paint is? Like if I were to move it, it can move back and forth, but it's not like totally flooded. It's not like 3D. Like if I were to look at the side of my paper, there's not like a dome of water. And I think I want my potion just to come up to here. I'm going to make a curved line. And then I look at that straight and I realize that my curved line is really wonky. I'm just going to fix it. And you can go back and forth fixing all you want. Like it's still not quite there. There we go. And the reason I'm keeping this so wet is that I want the paint to blend together. I don't want it to dry at any point. And if I've been working in one area too long, I'm going to jump to another area because I don't want that line there to dry off. Then I'm going to carefully go back in between the flowers and just fill it in. Now on my original sample, I went back in when it was dry and I did another layer concentrating only on the bottom. So you see it's darker here and lighter up here. You don't necessarily have to do that at all. Fill in. And just keep going until you have everything filled in. Now I think if I had my bottle drawn, this is where you would have seen a little bit of the potion peeking out of the bottom. I just fill that in. But if you didn't want to do that, you can just stick another leaf in there to cover that area so it looks believable. Oh my goodness, this is so much fun. I think I'm going to put this on my mantle as Halloween decor. Or if you're having a Halloween party, you can take a picture of it and use it as the invite to text to your guests. And then just be careful in between the leaves. And then you can feel free to go over your leaves and your flowers with another layer after this dries to tighten up any edges that maybe you painted over that you didn't intend to or you don't like how it looks. So to give that edge a little more time to dry, because I sort of painted in a little bit of light gray on the bottle, which you don't have to do. But to give that some time to dry, I'm going to work on the cork. And I made my cork sort of a brownish color, but again, you can pick whatever you want. Oops. Splashed a lot of paint. And I'm just going to fill it in. And we're pretty much getting ready to finish up. So if anybody has questions, now would be the time to get those in. And if you want to show me what you made today, you can definitely email it to me at krisloyaart@gmail.com. Or you can use my website form to send it through there. And Susan put the link to the website on there so that you can get the printout of the potion bottle. And you can leave this as is. You can totally leave it as is, or you can paint in a little bit of light gray, which is what I'm going to do. And then as for the spooky elements like the spiders and stuff like that, I'm going to put that in with pen, but you can leave those off. Like if you don't like spiders, I'm not going to make you paint a spider. So I just use a little bit of black paint, watered down. And I'm just filling in the top part. I'm not going to fill in the neck, the little lip of the neck area just yet. I'm going to give that cork a few more seconds to dry and then I'll do that. I'm just filling in that gray. You want to use enough water that you can push that color around, but not so much that you're sort of swimming in it. You do want your painting to dry. And if you have too much water on here, you can tap your brush on your paper towel and use that dry brush to kind of soak up some of that water. And then I'm going to fill in the top of the bottleneck. Like so. And no two paintings that you do are ever going to be completely alike. They're going to look a little different. I'm going to use a little bit of a thicker pen to draw in the spider. I'm going to let my bottle dry for a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, and I'll let the bottle dry for a few minutes before I put the spider and the spider webs in, or maybe just a minute. All this talk about Halloween, I really want candy now. The power of suggestion. I'm going to start to tuck in the spider webs, and you can put them wherever you feel like, because your flower arrangement is going to be different from how I painted my flowers. So I'm going to, what I do to draw, I'll just draw it for you before I put it on my actual piece. What I do, I'm not an expert at spider webs because I'm not trying to be that close to a spider. My husband is the spider relocator in our house. Okay, so you draw a crisscross. You draw a line through that. And then another one through here. So you have 8 sections. I mean, that sounds spidery, right? And then you just connect it with an inward curve. I can already tell that this pen does not love this paper. It's bleeding out slightly, but that's okay. I think it adds to the spook. So test your pens before you put them on your actual paper. You can flip it over and draw. Because you don't want to get to the end of your painting and then put a spider web on here and it ruins your painting. And then I go below that and I connect those. And then I just keep going until there's no space left in the middle. And that's how I draw my spider web. And I like when things look imperfect. I don't like when it's too neat. So it's not like these lines are shorter than that line. It's fine. So I'm gonna tuck one in here. And I'm gonna vary the size of these. Like I want some larger ones and I want some smaller ones. And I want an odd number as well. One here. And I'm sure some of you are going to need to wait for your paintings to dry a little bit to put some spider webs. I'm just putting it in areas where there isn't paint. I'm going to make a smaller one here. Like so. And I'm just going to cut my paper off to get rid of that purple that I got on there. And then I'm going to do one medium size below that. Like so. And you can connect them if you want to. Put a little line up to the top, or you can just leave them. And then I think I'm going to tuck in 2 over here. And then we'll do the spider, only if you're not terrified of spiders. I'm taking one for the team today because they're not my favorite. But at least the ones that I draw don't move and jump. Like so. And then we're going to put a spider. And the way we do that is I'm going to do a small oval for the head. And I'm going to kind of put it on the line of the bottle. You can put them in the middle, you can put them on the cap, you can put them wherever you want. I'm going to fill that in. And then I'm going to put an oval below that. And fill that in too. And this is what I think a spider looks like. I wasn't about to Google a reference. And then you want to put 8 legs, and you want to sort of have his legs be angled. So I sort of go up one segment, angle it out, and bring it down. Then we'll put another one here, and then we'll give him 2 legs out of this part of his body. So maybe he looks like a giant ant. Maybe I'm totally off here, but Googling a reference is not an option because sleep is a wonderful thing. Okay, so maybe the spider has like broken a leg because his legs look a little, I don't know what a spider leg looks like. But I'm pretty sure they don't all go in different directions like this. But it's your imaginary made up Halloween spider. He can do whatever he wants. It's a spider ant bug thing. And there you go. That's your Halloween potion. We are all finished. Now, I'm going to leave this alone. Maybe tonight I'll walk by and look at it. Definitely tomorrow in daylight and decide whether I think I might need a few more fillers or a few more little leaves here and there. But for tonight, this is how it stays. Does anybody have any questions or are we all good?
I'm just waiting another second or two, Kris. I think today's must have been really straightforward. We had a great turnout and good participation here, but not many questions.
Oh, good. I think you guys are getting the hang of it. I think they're all pros now, so they're good to go. But like I said, if anybody has any extra questions or they want to show me what they made tonight, because I love to see what you make, you can email me. It's Kris Loya Art, KrisLoyaArt @gmail.com, and I'll be happy to help you.
Terrific, Kris. Thank you so much for today. This was a wonderful program.
Thank you so much.
The picture you made is beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
And I'll just remind the audience, they can catch other programs with you through the library. The next one you have is actually Friday, November 12th at 4 o'clock again. You'll be painting a teacup next time.
Yes, and that's going to be fun. Those are pretty.
It looked beautiful. And of course, all of our Friday art classes are on our calendar at library.loudoun.gov if you just go down to the event calendar. So thank you again, Kris. I hope you have a great weekend. And thank you to the audience for turning out.
Thank you, Susan. You too. Have a wonderful weekend.